My name is Serena. I am 38 years old. I was standing in the kitchen I renovated with my own money when my brother told me I'd get nothing. 3 weeks had passed since we buried my father. 3 weeks since I paid $7,000 for his funeral because my mother said there was no money. 3 weeks since I stood in the rain at the cemetery, watching them lower him into the ground while I mentally calculated whether I could afford to take another day off work. I'd come to the house that afternoon to help my mother sort through paperwork. Death creates mountains of it. Insurance forms, bank statements, utility bills that still need paying. I was tired. The kind of tired that lives in your bones, that no amount of sleep can touch. But this was what I did. This was what I'd always done. Derek was already there when I arrived. To my younger brother, 31 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with an energy I hadn't seen in months, almost excited. My mother sat across from him, her hands folded, her face composed in that careful way she had when she was about to tell me something she knew I wouldn't like. "We've been talking," Derek said before I even sat down, "about the house." I set my bag on the counter, the same counter I'd saved for months to replace 5 years ago when the old one started falling apart. Granite. My mother had wanted granite. "What about it?" I asked. "Well, with Dad gone, Mom can't stay here alone forever," Derek continued. He had papers in front of him, printouts. I could see the logo of a real estate website. I talked to my friend Jason. He's a realtor now, and he says, with the neighborhood gentrifying, that this place could sell for around $340,000. My mother watched me, waiting. "The mortgage is down to about $89,000, Derek went on, his voice taking on that tone people use when they're explaining something they think you're too simple to understand. "After selling costs, closing fees, all that, we'd clear around $230,000, maybe a bit more if we get lucky." We. I noticed that word. We. "Split 2 ways? That's a solid foundation for both of us," Derek said. "Mom can get a nice condo, something easier to maintain. I could finally get my business off the ground properly." I stood very still. The afternoon light came through the window above the sink, the window I'd replaced 2 years ago when the seal broke and moisture started collecting between the panes. $600. Where do I fit into this? My voice came out quieter than I intended. My mother spoke for the first time. "Derek and I discussed it. We think it's fair to split the proceeds from the house. It's been in the family for 32 years. Your father and I bought it before you were born." "And me?" I asked again. Derek glanced at our mother, then back at me. "Well, you've been helping out, obviously. We appreciate that. We thought maybe 10,000 would be fair. For your help." $10,000. I'd paid the mortgage on this house for 15 years. $1,400 a month. That alone was over $250,000. The roof, the furnace, the water heater, property taxes, insurance, repairs I'd stopped counting. "I've paid over $280,000 into this house," I said. My hands were shaking, so I pressed them flat against the counter. "I have records, bank statements, receipts, canceled checks." My mother's face hardened in a way I knew well. "You were helping family, Maya. That's what family does. We raised you, fed you, kept a roof over your head for 18 years. You were just giving back." "Giving back," I repeated. "Nobody forced you," Derek added. He was getting defensive now. I could hear it in his voice. "You offered to help. If you expected to be paid back, you should have said so." I looked at my mother, really looked at her, waiting for something, some acknowledgement, some flicker of recognition that what she was saying was cruel beyond measure. She looked back at me with nothing in her eyes but irritation. "You've been living rent-free in our lives for years," she said. "This is just how it is. Derek and I have discussed it. The house will be split between us. You can have 10,000 if you want, but honestly, you're being very ungrateful right now. The room felt like it was tilting. I thought about every month I'd transferred money from my account to theirs. Every time I'd skipped buying something I needed because the house needed something more. Every vacation I hadn't taken. Every time I'd eaten rice and beans for a week because property taxes were due. "You're serious?" I said. "Your father would be ashamed of you right now," my mother said quietly. "Making this about money when we just lost him." Something broke open inside me. Not sadness. I'd felt sadness for so long it had become like wallpaper. Just there. Part of the background. This was different. This was cold and clear and sharp. I picked up my bag. "Maya," Derek started. "Don't," I said. I walked out of that kitchen, out of that house, and I didn't look back. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept thinking about my mother's face, the casual cruelty of it, the absolute certainty that she was entitled to everything I'd given. And I realized something sitting there in my 12-year-old car, parked in front of the house I'd kept standing. They had never seen me at all. Not really. I'd been invisible my entire life. A resource. A bank account with a heartbeat. For the first time in 38 years, I felt something other than the desperate need to make them love me. I felt angry. I wasn't always invisible. There are photographs from before Derek was born. Me at 3, 4, 5 years old. In those pictures, my parents are smiling. My father holds me on his shoulders. My mother brushes my hair. I'm wearing little dresses they bought me, standing in front of birthday cakes, opening Christmas presents. I remember some of those moments. Not many, but some. I remember my father teaching me to ride a bike in the driveway, his hand steady on the back of the seat. I remember my mother reading to me before bed, her voice soft, her hand warm on my back. Then Derek was born, and everything changed. I was 7 years old. My mother had been pregnant for months, and everyone was excited. A baby, a little brother or sister. I'd helped pick out nursery colors. Yellow, because they didn't know if it would be a boy or girl. I'd felt important, included. The day Derek came home from the hospital, I understood that my position in the family had shifted. My mother carried him through the door wrapped in a blue blanket, and my father followed with flowers and balloons. They moved through the house like Derek was made of glass. Precious. Miraculous. "Come see your brother," my mother said, and I did. I looked at his small red face and felt nothing in particular. He was just a baby. "You'll need to be very helpful now," my father told me. "You're the big sister. That's an important job." I took that job seriously. Within months, the pattern was set. Derek needed things: attention, care, money, time. Lots of time. My mother stopped reading to me at night because Derek wouldn't sleep. My father stopped our Saturday morning bike rides because Derek was fussy and my mother needed help. My 8th birthday fell on a Saturday. My mother had promised we'd go to the zoo, just the two of us. The way we used to. I woke up excited, put on my favorite dress, waited by the door with my small backpack. Derek had a cold. Just a mild one. A runny nose. Nothing serious. But my mother was worried. She took his temperature 3 times, called the pediatrician's office, spent the whole morning hovering over him while he slept in his playpen. "We'll go next weekend," she told me, distracted, not looking at me. We never went. I learned not to expect things after that. Expectations led to disappointment, and disappointment felt like something was wrong with me for wanting anything at all. I became useful instead. When I was 9, I started watching Derek after school, while my mother worked her part-time job at an insurance office. When I was 11, I learned to cook basic meals: spaghetti, grilled cheese, scrambled eggs. My parents praised this. "You're so responsible," They'd say, "So mature for your age." I thought that meant they loved me. Looking back now, I understand they loved what I could do for them. Derek was different. Derek was loved for existing. I remember my high school graduation. I'd worked hard for 4 years. Mostly A's, a few B's, enough to get accepted to the state university 3 hours away. I was proud. Scared, but proud. I'd be the first person in my family to go to a 4-year college. The ceremony was on a Thursday evening in June. Hot, sticky weather, the gym packed with families. I sat in an alphabetical row in my polyester gown, sweating, waiting for my name to be called. When it finally was, Maya Catherine Rodriguez. I walked across that stage and looked out into the crowd for my parents. They weren't there. And I found them in the parking lot afterward. They'd come, but they'd left halfway through. Derek had a little league game across town, and they didn't want him to miss it. He was 10 years old. They'd left my graduation to watch him play baseball. "We saw the beginning," my mother said when I found them by the car. She sounded defensive. "You understand, right? Derek's game was important to him." I said I understood. I always said I understood. The state university sent me an acceptance letter and a financial aid package. It wasn't enough. I'd need help, maybe $5,000 a year to cover what the loans and grants didn't. I showed my parents the letter one night after dinner. My father looked it over, then set it down. "That's a lot of money," he said. "I know," I said quickly. "I'll work summers. I'll get a campus job. I just need help with what's left." My mother and father exchanged a look, the kind of look that meant they'd already discussed this. "Community college makes more sense," my mother said. "You can live at home, save money, get your basics out of the way, then transfer if you still want to." I felt something sink in my chest. But I got in. They accepted me. "And we're very proud," my father said. "But we can't afford it, honey. You have to be realistic." 3 months later, Derek needed new equipment for traveling baseball. $1,500. My parents found it. I started community college that fall. I commuted from home, worked 25 hours a week at a grocery store, and took classes in between. My parents asked me to contribute $200 a month for expenses. "Since you're working now," my mother said, "and living here." I was 18 years old. Derek got accepted to an out-of-state school when he turned 18. Not a prestigious one. His grades were mediocre, his SAT scores average, but it had a good baseball program, and Derek wanted to play. My parents made it work. Student loans, payment plans, my father picking up weekend shifts. "This is different," my mother said when I asked how they could afford it. "Derek needs this experience. College is about more than classes." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask what I needed, what experience I deserved. But I didn't. I stayed quiet, the way I'd learned to stay quiet, and I told myself it was fine. Family helps family. That's what you do. I finished my associate degree in 2 years and got a job in medical billing at a local hospital. The pay was decent, $32,000 a year with benefits. I was 22 years old, still living at home, still contributing my $200 a month. I started looking at apartments. Small studios, nothing fancy. I could afford it if I was careful. When I mentioned it at dinner one night, my mother went quiet. "Your father's hours got cut," she said after a long pause. "The post office is restructuring. We're going to struggle with the mortgage for a while." She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't have to. The implication was clear. Good daughters don't abandon their families when things get hard. I told myself it was temporary, just until they got back on their feet. I was still living there when I turned 30. The favoritism wasn't always loud. Sometimes I think that's what made it so hard to name. But if my parents had been obviously cruel, if they'd screamed or hit or told me directly they didn't love me, I could have pointed to it. I could have said, This is wrong. Instead, it was quiet. 1,000 small erasures, a pattern of forgetting. I remember the year I turned 25. I'd been working at the hospital for 3 years by then, moved up to a senior billing position, got a small raise. I felt proud of myself, competent, like maybe I was building something. My birthday fell on a Saturday that year. I didn't expect much. Maybe dinner out, a cake, an hour where I felt like I mattered. I'd mentioned it a few times. My birthday's coming up. Casual, light, trying not to sound like I was begging for attention. Saturday came. I woke up to an empty house, and my parents had driven 3 hours to watch Derek play in a regional baseball tournament. They'd left Friday night, wouldn't be back until Sunday. There was no note, no card, no text message. I sat at the kitchen table and ate cereal alone, and I told myself it was fine. Derek's tournament was important. They'd remember when they got back? They didn't. When they came home Sunday evening, my mother was animated, talking about Derek's game, how well he'd played, how proud she was. My father agreed, smiling, replaying highlights. I listened from the living room, waiting for a pause where I could remind them. The pause never came. I let it go. What would I say? You forgot my birthday? It sounded petty even in my head. Childish. I was 25 years old. Birthdays didn't matter. Except they did. They mattered because it wasn't really about the birthday. It was about being seen, being remembered, mattering enough to take up space in someone's mind. Derek dropped out of college that same year. He'd lasted 2 years, failed several classes, stopped going to practice. My parents were devastated, not because he'd wasted their money, but because his dream was over. He's going through something, my mother said. He needs time to figure things out. He moved back home, took over his old bedroom, slept until noon most days, worked part-time at a sporting goods store when he felt like it, contributed nothing to household expenses. I was paying $400 a month by then. My parents had asked me to increase my contribution just temporarily when my father's hours were cut. Temporarily had stretched into years. I worked 45 hours a week, came home to cook dinner most nights because my mother was tired, did laundry on weekends, cleaned the bathroom Derek and I shared because he never did. And I watched my parents treat him like a guest in their home while I was treated like staff. When I was 26, I needed a root canal. The pain had been building for weeks, sharp and constant, but I'd put off going to the dentist because I was trying to save money. When I finally went, the dentist said I'd waited too long. Root canal, crown, the whole thing. $4,000, even with insurance. I didn't have $4,000. I had maybe $800 in savings. I'd spent the rest covering a plumbing emergency at the house 2 months earlier. And I went to my mother and asked if I could skip my monthly contribution for a few months to cover the dental work. Just temporarily. I'd make it up later. She sighed. Actually sighed, like I was asking for something unreasonable. Things are tight right now, Maya, she said. Your father's medication costs went up. We're barely making it as is. I paid for the root canal with a credit card and spent the next year paying it off. The same year, Derek decided he wanted to try a coding boot camp. $12,000 for a 3-month program that promised job placement afterward. My parents didn't have the money, but they found it. Payment plan, small loan from my uncle. They were so excited for him. This could really be it, my mother said. His fresh start. He attended for 6 weeks, then stopped going. Too hard, he said. Not his thing. And I never said anything. I'd learned by then that pointing out the unfairness would make me the problem. The bitter daughter. The jealous sister. It was easier to stay quiet and hope that eventually they'd notice what I was doing. Notice me. They never did. My mother would spend hours on the phone with Derek, listening to his problems, giving advice, laughing at his jokes. When I came home from work, she'd ask, "How was your day?" In that automatic way people ask when they don't actually want an answer. If I started to tell her anything real, something that happened, someone who frustrated me, a small success, her eyes would glaze. She'd check her phone, change the subject. My father was the same. He'd seek me out when he needed help with something, bills to organize, forms to fill out, a problem to solve. But he never asked about my life. Never asked if I was happy, if I was lonely, if I had dreams beyond this house. I didn't exist as a person to them. I existed as a function. At 28, I met Aaron. Kind, stable, funny in a quiet way. He worked in finance. Nothing glamorous, but he was good at his job and passionate about it. We met through a friend's party, the rare social event I actually attended. We dated for 8 months before I brought him home to meet my family. I was nervous. I wanted them to like him. More than that, I wanted them to see that someone valued me, that I was worth loving. My parents were polite, distant. They asked Aaron surface questions: where he worked, where he grew up, what his parents did. Derek barely acknowledged him. The dinner was awkward, stilted. Then my mother learned Aaron worked in finance. Suddenly, she was interested. Suddenly, she had questions. Did his company hire? Did he know anyone in investment banking? Would he be willing to talk to Derek about career options? I watched her light up talking to him, and I realized she wasn't interested in Aaron as my partner. She was interested in what he could do for Derek. Aaron noticed too. A few weeks later, we were having dinner at his apartment when he said, "Can I ask you something? About your family?" I tensed immediately. "Sure." "Do you notice how they treat you?" "What do you mean?" He chose his words carefully. "They ask a lot of you. Financially, emotionally, but they don't seem to give much back." "And your brother?" "Derek's going through a hard time," I said automatically. "Maya." Aaron's voice was gentle. "Derek's 30 years old. He lives at home, doesn't pay rent, doesn't contribute. You're working full-time and paying their bills. Don't you see how unbalanced that is?" I felt something hot and defensive rise in my chest. "They're my family." "I know. But family shouldn't feel like this. You shouldn't have to earn their love." "I'm not—" I stopped. My throat felt tight. "You are," he said quietly, "and it's breaking my heart to watch." We broke up 2 weeks later. I told him I couldn't be with someone who didn't understand family loyalty. What I meant was, I couldn't be with someone who saw the truth I was too afraid to face, because if Aaron was right, if my family was using me, then what did that make the last 10 years of my life? What did that make every sacrifice I'd made? It was easier to push him away than to answer that question. I was 29 years old and I was so tired, but I didn't know how to stop. Stopping would mean admitting I'd wasted my 20s trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it. So I kept going. I kept paying. I kept hoping. I kept disappearing. When I turned 30, my father collapsed at work. He'd been having symptoms for months: fatigue, excessive thirst, blurred vision, but he'd ignored them. He was 62, stubborn, from a generation that didn't go to doctors unless they were dying. By the time he collapsed, his blood sugar was over 400. Type 2 diabetes. Severe. The kind that develops slowly while you're not paying attention, then demands attention all at once. He was in the hospital for a week. I took time off work to be there, to talk to doctors, to learn about insulin and glucose monitoring and dietary changes. My mother was overwhelmed, crying in hospital waiting rooms, unable to process the information. Derek visited twice, stayed for 20 minutes each time, looked uncomfortable around the medical equipment. I became the point person. I always became the point person. When my father was discharged, the doctor was frank. He couldn't work the same hours anymore. The physical demands of his postal route, the stress, the irregular schedule, it was all dangerous now. He needed to reduce his hours significantly or retire early. He chose early retirement. He was eligible for disability, pension, Social Security. But combined, it was 60% of what he'd been making. The mortgage payment alone was $1,400 a month. I found my mother crying at the kitchen table one night, bills spread in front of her. "We can't afford this," she said. "We're going to lose the house." I should have walked away. I should have let them figure it out. Let them downsize. Let them face the consequences of never saving, never planning. But I couldn't. They were my parents. They'd raised me. This was what family did. "I'll help," I said. I started covering the mortgage. Just the mortgage, I told myself. Just until they stabilized. $1,400 a month. I was making $42,000 a year by then. After taxes, that was about $2,800 a month. Half my income, gone. I moved from my studio apartment into something cheaper, a tiny one-bedroom in a worse neighborhood. I stopped eating out entirely. I drove my car until it had 190,000 miles on it because I couldn't afford a new one. My mother cried when I made the first payment, hugged me, said, "Thank you, honey, just for a little while, until we figure something out." That was 8 years ago. Nothing ever got figured out. Instead, the house kept needing things, the way old houses do. The roof started leaking. I got quotes. $8,000 for a full replacement. I didn't have $8,000. I took out a personal loan at 9% interest and paid it off over 3 years. The furnace died in January. $4,500 for a new one. I used my emergency fund, the small cushion I'd built up over years of careful saving, and then had nothing left when my car needed transmission work 3 months later. Property taxes, homeowner's insurance. When the water heater broke, when the driveway needed repaving, when the electrical panel had to be upgraded to meet code. Every time I paid. Every time. When I told myself it was temporary, I kept records, obsessively detailed records. Not because I expected to be paid back, but because tracking the numbers was the only way I felt like I had any control. Spreadsheets organized by month, by category. Bank statements in labeled folders. Receipts in envelopes sorted by year. By the time I was 35, I'd paid over $200,000 into that house. $200,000 while living in a 400-square-foot apartment with a radiator that clanged all night and a landlord who never fixed anything. Meanwhile, Derek moved in and out of the house like it was a hotel. He'd get a girlfriend, move in with her. Things would fall apart. He'd move back. He'd get a job, work for 6 months, quit or get fired, live off unemployment. He never paid rent, never bought groceries, never contributed a single dollar to the house I was keeping afloat. My parents didn't ask him to. When I once carefully suggested that maybe Derek could help out, my mother looked at me like I'd suggested something cruel. "He's trying to find his path," she said. "He's struggling." "I'm struggling too," I said quietly. She didn't hear me, or she heard and didn't care. I've never been sure which is worse. When I was 33, Derek decided he wanted to start a business, selling supplements online, some multi-level marketing thing a friend had roped him into. He needed capital, $10,000 for initial inventory and marketing. He asked me directly, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, our mother hovering hopefully in the background. "I know it's a lot," Derek said, "but this could really be something, Maya. And I've got a whole business plan. I just need someone to believe in me." I looked at him, really looked at him. 31 years old. Never held a job for more than a year. Never saved a dollar, never taken responsibility for anything in his entire life. No, I said. His face changed. Shock first, then anger. Seriously? He said. I'm your brother. I don't have $10,000 to give you, Derek. I'm paying the mortgage on this house. I'm paying for everything. He stood up. You're just jealous. You've always been jealous that Mom and Dad support my dreams. I felt something crack inside me. I'm not jealous, Derek. I'm tired. My mother intervened before I could say more, pulled Derek into another room. Later, she came to find me. That was cruel, she said. He was asking for your help. I've been helping for years, I said. I've been helping my entire adult life. Where's my help? Where's anyone's support for me? You have a good job, she said, dismissing it. You're doing fine. Derek needs this. I stopped arguing. What was the point? They would never see it. I could have carved the numbers into my skin, and they still wouldn't see it. Derek got his $10,000 somehow, probably alone, maybe from a friend. I never knew. The business failed in 8 months, exactly as I knew it would. He moved back home. My mother made sympathetic sounds about how hard entrepreneurship is, how proud she was that he tried. I kept paying the mortgage. My social life had withered to almost nothing by then. I had coworkers I was friendly with, but no real friends. No one I could talk to about this, because how do you explain it? How do you tell someone you're choosing to drain your bank account for a family that doesn't appreciate you? It sounds insane. It is insane. But I couldn't stop. I'd invested so much money, time, hope, years of my life. Walking away would mean admitting it was all for nothing, that I'd wasted my 20s and 30s on people who never loved me the way I loved them. So I kept going, kept paying, kept waiting for the day they'd finally notice, finally thank me, finally see me. I was 38 years old, and I'd spent over $280,000 keeping their house standing. And then my father died, and I learned that all of it, every sacrifice, every payment, every moment of invisibility, had meant absolutely nothing to them. My father died on a Tuesday in October. Heart attack. Sudden. He was 68 years old. And I got the call at work from my mother. Her voice was strange, flat with shock. He's gone, she said. He collapsed in the kitchen. The paramedics tried, but he's gone. I drove to the hospital in a blur. My mother was in a private room, Derek beside her, both of them crying. I hugged my mother. I held her while she sobbed. I felt strangely numb, like I was watching the scene from outside my body. Then the logistics started. Someone had to make decisions. Someone had to handle things. That someone was me. I talked to the doctors, signed forms, contacted the funeral home. I called my father's brother, my mother's sister, people from their church. I wrote the obituary because my mother couldn't, and Derek didn't know where to start. I chose the casket. Nothing too expensive. He and we couldn't afford expensive, and picked out flowers and organized the service. The funeral home asked how we'd be paying. My mother looked at me helplessly. Do you have insurance? I asked her gently. Life insurance? She shook her head. We let it lapse. Years ago. We couldn't afford the premiums. Of course they had. The funeral cost $7,000. I put it on my credit card. The service was on Friday. Overcast sky, cool air, leaves turning brown. A modest gathering, maybe 40 people. I stood between my mother and Derek, listening to a priest talk about my father's life, and felt nothing. Empty, like something essential had been scooped out of me. Derek cried openly. People hugged him, told him how strong he was, how much his father loved him. My mother accepted condolences with dignity, leaning on Derek's arm, and I organized the reception at the house afterward. Made coffee, set out food people had brought, greeted guests, cleaned up when everyone left. That night, I went home to my apartment and sat in the dark. I thought I'd cry, but I didn't. I just sat there, too tired to even feel grief properly. I thought maybe now that we'd lost him, the family might draw closer. Maybe this shared loss would mean something. Maybe they'd need me in a different way. I was wrong. 3 weeks passed. I went back to work, moving through days like a ghost. My mother called occasionally, her voice small and lost, and I'd drive over to check on her. Bring groceries, help with paperwork, all the things I'd always done. On a Saturday afternoon, I went to the house to help her sort through my father's documents, insurance papers, bank statements, what the accumulation of a life. She'd asked me to come, said she couldn't face it alone. Derek was there when I arrived. That should have been my first warning. Derek was never there unless he wanted something. He was sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread in front of him, printouts from real estate websites, his laptop open to a mortgage calculator. "Hey," he said when I walked in. He looked almost energetic. "Good timing. We need to talk about the house." My mother sat across from him. Her face was composed, careful. "What about the house?" I set my bag down. "Well, Mom can't stay here alone forever," Derek said. "It's too big, too much maintenance, and with the neighborhood gentrifying the way it has, the property value has gone up significantly." He turned his laptop toward me, a real estate estimate, to $340,000. My friend Jason, he's a realtor now. He ran the numbers. The mortgage is down to around $89,000. After selling costs and everything, we'd clear about $230,000. Maybe more. We. That word again. "Split 2 ways," Derek continued. "That's $115,000 each. Mom can buy a condo, something manageable. I can finally get my business off the ground properly. It's perfect timing, really." I looked at my mother. She was watching me, waiting. "Where do I fit into this?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "What do you mean?" Derek asked. "I've been paying the mortgage on this house for 8 years," I said slowly. "I've paid for every major repair: the roof, the furnace, the water heater, property taxes, insurance. I've paid over $280,000 into this house." Derek waved a hand dismissively. "You are helping out. We appreciate that." "Helping out," I repeated. My mother spoke. Her voice was cool. "Maya, you were living here for years, rent-free. We fed you, clothed you, raised you. You were just giving back. That's what daughters do." The kitchen tilted. The floor felt unsteady. "I moved out when I was 30, I said. "I've been paying the mortgage from my own apartment for 8 years. "Nobody forced you to pay anything," my mother said. "You offered. If you expected to be paid back, you should have said something." "I have records," I said. My hands were shaking. I pressed them against the table. Bank statements, canceled checks, credit card statements, $287,000. I can prove every payment. Derek leaned back in his chair. "Look, we talked about this. We think $10,000 is fair for your help. But honestly, you're being pretty selfish right now. We just lost Dad. $10,000. I'd paid over $250,000 into this house, and they were offering me $10,000. You can't be serious," I said. "You chose to help," my mother said. Her voice was getting sharp now, defensive. "Nobody asked you to pay for things. You wanted to. Now you're trying to make us feel guilty about it, and it's not fair." "I paid the mortgage because you said you'd lose the house otherwise," I said. I could hear my voice rising and couldn't stop it. "You said it was temporary. You said—" "We said we appreciated your help," my mother interrupted. And we do. But this house belongs to your father and me. Now it belongs to me. And Derek is right. I can't stay here alone. We're selling it, and we're splitting the proceeds fairly. Fairly, I said. Between Derek and me, she said. You can have 10,000 if you want it. But honestly, Maya, you're being very ungrateful right now. Your father would be ashamed. The words hit like a physical blow. My father, who I'd just buried, who I'd paid to bury, who'd barely spoken to me in the last 10 years except to ask for help with bills. I looked at my mother's face, really looked, searching for some flicker of recognition, some acknowledgement of what she was doing. There was nothing. Just irritation that I wasn't agreeing fast enough. I looked at Derek. He looked annoyed, impatient, like I was being difficult about something simple. They meant it. And they genuinely believed they were entitled to everything. They genuinely saw nothing wrong with this. I'd spent 20 years making myself smaller, quieter, more useful, thinking that someday they'd love me the way I loved them, thinking that sacrifice would eventually be enough. And they'd been planning to cut me out entirely, give me $10,000 like a tip for good service. Something broke inside me. Not sadness, not even surprise, really. Something harder, colder, clarity. I picked up my bag. Maya, Derek started. Don't, I said quietly. I walked out of that house, got in my car, sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, engine off, staring at nothing. I'd given them everything, and they'd taken it all without a second thought, without gratitude, without love. For the first time in my life, I wasn't sad about it. Because I was angry, and I was done. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I sat at my kitchen table with 15 years of financial records spread in front of me, bank statements in chronological order, credit card bills highlighted in yellow, receipts organized by category, spreadsheets I'd maintained obsessively, tracking every payment. The numbers were staggering when I added them all up. Mortgage payments, $151,200 over 8 years. Property taxes, $24,000. Homeowners insurance, $12,000. Major repairs, roof, furnace, water heater, electrical panel, driveway, plumbing, $42,000. Utilities I'd covered during periods when they couldn't, $8,000. The funeral, $7,000. Smaller things I'd stopped tracking years ago, $43,000 estimated. Total, $287,200. $287,200. I sat back in my chair, staring at that number. More than $250,000. Money I could have used to buy my own home, to travel, to build a life. Money I'd poured into a house I didn't own for a family who saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of funds. I opened my laptop and started searching. Financial contribution to property without ownership. Equitable interest in real estate. Unjust enrichment property law. The law was more complicated than I'd expected, but certain phrases jumped out at me. Long-term financial contributions can establish equitable interest. Promises of repayment can create constructive trusts. Courts can prevent unjust enrichment even without formal agreements. I searched through my email, found messages from my mother going back years. Thank you for helping with the mortgage. Key will make this right when things get better. You're saving our home. We won't forget this. When we sell eventually, you'll be taken care of, I promise. I screenshot every message, saved them all to a folder. I searched through my text messages, found more. My mother, can you cover the roof? We'll pay you back. My mother, I know it's a lot. We'll figure out how to make it up to you. My mother, you're an angel. This is temporary. Nothing was temporary. Nothing was ever temporary, but I had proof. Proof that they'd promised. Proof that they'd acknowledged my contribution. Proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't making this up, wasn't being unreasonable. I searched for lawyers on Monday morning, real estate attorneys. I made a list, read reviews, called 3 offices. The 4th attorney I spoke to was named Patricia Chen. She answered her own phone, which I took as a good sign. "Tell me what's happening," she said after I'd explained I needed help with a property dispute. I told her everything: the payments, the promises, the plan to sell. The offer of $10,000? I tried to stay calm, professional, but my voice cracked when I got to the part about my mother saying I'd been living rent-free in their lives. Patricia was quiet for a moment after I finished. "How much documentation do you have?" she asked. "Everything," I said. "Bank statements, checks, credit card bills, receipts, emails, text messages, 15 years of records. Can you bring them to my office this afternoon?" I took the afternoon off work, brought everything in a banker's box, organized, labeled, highlighted. Patricia spent 90 minutes going through it all. She made notes, asked questions, verified dates. When she finished, she sat back in her chair and looked at me. "This is legally complex but morally clear," she said. "You've been exploited." Hearing someone else say it out loud made something loosen in my chest. "We can file a claim to establish your equitable interest in the property," Patricia continued. "Given your financial contributions and the remaining mortgage you've essentially paid, you likely have a strong case. At minimum, we can prevent them from selling without addressing your interest. At best, we might argue you've acquired ownership rights." "Ownership rights?" I repeated. "The mortgage is still in your father's name. The deed is in both your parents' names, now passing to your mother. But your payments can be traced directly to mortgage and tax payments. More importantly, these emails from your mother could be interpreted as acknowledgement of your financial interest. She made promises. She created an expectation." Patricia leaned forward. "Here's what I recommend. We file an emergency motion to prevent sale of the property pending litigation. That stops them from selling while we build our case. Then we pursue either a claim for repayment with interest or, more aggressively, a claim for proportional ownership based on your contribution." "How much would this cost?" I asked quietly. "I work on contingency for cases like this. I take a percentage of what we recover. If we don't recover anything, you don't pay." "But Maya," she paused. "This is going to be difficult. They're your family. They're going to fight you. They're going to say terrible things. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about my mother's face when she told me I'd been living rent-free in their lives. I thought about Derek offering me $10,000 like it was generous. I thought about every sacrifice dismissed, every birthday forgotten, every moment of invisibility. "Yes," I said, "I'm prepared." "Then let's file." I signed the paperwork that afternoon. Patricia said she'd have the emergency motion filed within 48 hours. My mother and Derek would be served with papers. I drove home in a daze, stopped at a red light, and suddenly I was crying. Not sad crying, something else. Relief, maybe, or terror, or the strange freedom of finally standing up for myself. I thought about the girl I'd been at 22, the one who made her first mortgage payment believing it was temporary, to believing her family would appreciate it, believing that sacrifice equaled love. I thought about every year since, every payment, every hope that this would be the month they noticed, the month they thanked me, the month I mattered. I'd been waiting 20 years for them to see me. I was done waiting. This wasn't about the money. It had never been about the money. It was about refusing to be erased, refusing to let them write me out of my own story, refusing to disappear quietly while they profited from my sacrifice. I was 38 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. Even if it meant losing them completely. Even if it meant admitting that the family I'd built my life around had never existed the way I needed it to. I authorized Patricia to file the claim, and I didn't look back. The papers were served on Wednesday afternoon. Patricia called to tell me, "Your mother and brother have been officially notified. The emergency motion hearing is set for 2 weeks from now. They'll have time to respond and hire legal counsel if they choose." I sat down on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, and tried to breathe normally. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now they'll likely try to contact you. Don't respond. Not to calls, texts, emails, nothing. All communication goes through me. If they show up at your apartment, you don't open the door. If they try to reach you at work, you refer them to my office. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Maya," Patricia said gently, "this is going to get harder before it gets better. Stay strong." She was right. Derek started calling within an hour. My phone lit up again and again, and I let it go to voicemail. Listened to the messages later, morbidly curious. The first one was angry. "What the hell, Maya? You're suing us? Your own family? This is insane. Call me back." The second one was different, quieter. "Look, if you're upset about the money, we can talk. You don't need to do this. Just call me." The third one was my mother's voice, shaking. "How could you do this to me? After everything? Your father just died, Maya. How could you?" I saved them all. Patricia had told me to document everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the hearing, about facing them in court, about what they'd say. I kept second-guessing myself. Maybe I was being cruel. Maybe I should just let it go. Take the 10,000 and walk away. Then I'd remember my mother's face when she said I'd been living rent-free in their lives, and the doubt would harden back into certainty. On Thursday evening, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Maya, this is Lisa, Aaron's sister. I heard about your dad. I'm so sorry. If you need anything, I'm here. Lisa." I hadn't talked to her in years, not since Aaron and I broke up. We'd been friendly back then, grabbed coffee a few times, but we'd lost touch after the breakup. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Thank you. I'm okay." She wrote back immediately. "Can I buy you coffee this weekend? No pressure. Just thought you might need a friend." I almost said no. I'd gotten so used to handling everything alone, to not burdening anyone, but something in me was tired of being alone. "Saturday afternoon?" I wrote back. We met at a small cafe near my apartment. Lisa looked the same, warm smile, easy manner. She hugged me when she arrived, and I realized how long it had been since anyone had hugged me just because. We got coffee and sat by the window. She asked how I was doing, and I gave the standard answer. "I'm managing." "Maya," she said quietly, "I heard through the family grapevine about the legal stuff." I tensed. "Aaron told you?" "No. Mutual friend who knows your cousin. Small world." She paused. "Do you want to talk about it?" I should have said no, should have kept it all locked inside the way I always did. But I was so tired, so completely exhausted from carrying everything alone. So I told her. Everything. The payments, the promises, the plan to sell the house, the offer of $10,000, the lawsuit, my mother's voicemails. Lisa listened without interrupting. When I finished, I felt empty. Wrung out. "I'm sorry," I said. "That was a lot." "Don't apologize." Lisa reached across the table and took my hand. "Maya, do you know what I'm hearing?" I shook my head. "I'm hearing someone who's been trying to earn love from people who decided long ago you weren't worth loving. And that's not a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their capacity." The words hit something deep. I felt my eyes sting. "You're not crazy." Lisa continued. You're not selfish. You're not cruel. You're finally standing up for yourself, and they're panicking because they've lost their source of free money. They're my family, I said weakly. Family doesn't treat you like this. Family doesn't take and give nothing back. A family doesn't erase your contributions and call you ungrateful. I wiped my eyes. I don't know if I can do this. The lawsuit, the fighting. I'm not strong enough. You are, Lisa said firmly. You're one of the strongest people I know. You've been surviving this for 20 years. Now you're finally fighting back. We talked for 2 hours. She told me about her own family, a controlling father who'd demanded access to her bank accounts when she was in her 20s, who'd treated her earnings as family money. She'd had to get a lawyer involved just to establish financial independence. It nearly destroyed me, she said. But on the other side, I had myself back. My life back. It was worth it. Before we left, Lisa made me promise to keep in touch. You don't have to do this alone, she said. I'm here. Whatever you need. I hadn't realized how desperately I needed to hear that. Over the next week, Lisa helped me prepare. We met twice more. She helped me organize my thoughts, practice staying calm when talking about the situation. She reminded me, again and again, that I wasn't wrong. They're going to try to make you feel guilty, she said. They're going to rewrite history. Say you're remembering things wrong, that you're exaggerating. You have to stay grounded in the facts. I showed her my records. She looked through them and shook her head. This is exploitation, Maya, clear as day. Patricia had recommended I see a therapist to help process everything. I'd resisted at first. Therapy felt like admitting there was something wrong with me. But Lisa encouraged me, so I made an appointment. Dr. Evelyn Park was in her 50s, calm and direct. She listened to my story in our first session, then said something that made me stop. What you're describing is a family dynamic where you were assigned the role of scapegoat, while your brother was the golden child. It's a common pattern in dysfunctional families. The scapegoat is blamed for problems, expected to sacrifice, and never given the same care or attention as the golden child. But they didn't abuse me, I said. They just needed help. Emotional neglect is a form of abuse, Dr. Park said gently. So is financial exploitation. You were conditioned from childhood to believe your value came from what you could provide, not from who you are. That's not love, Maya. That's use. The sessions were hard. I cried in most of them, but slowly things started making sense. In the patterns I couldn't name before had names: scapegoat, golden child, parentification, enmeshment, conditional love. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't defective. I'd been systematically taught that I didn't matter, and I'd internalized that lesson so deeply I couldn't see it happening. 10 days after the papers were served, Patricia called again. The hearing is in 4 days, she said. Your mother has hired an attorney. They're going to argue that your contributions were gifts, that there was no agreement to repay, that you're only doing this out of spite after your father's death. Can they win? I asked. They could. But we have strong evidence. The emails, the text messages, the sheer scope of your financial contribution. I'm confident, but I need you to be prepared for what they'll say. Audit won't be pleasant. I thought about my mother's voicemails, the accusations, the guilt, the rewriting of history. I'm ready, I said. And for the first time, I believed it. I had Lisa. I had Dr. Park. I had Patricia. I had 15 years of documentation. Most importantly, I had decided I was worth fighting for. That was something they'd never taught me, something I'd had to learn on my own at 38, after wasting decades trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. But I'd learned it now, and I wasn't backing down. Section 8. Public Confrontation and Truth Reveal. The voicemails continued. My mother crying. Derek, angry. Sometimes both, tag teaming. I didn't listen to most of them. Just saved them and sent them to Patricia. The hearing was scheduled for a Monday morning. I took the day off work, dressed in the most professional clothes I owned, and met Patricia at the courthouse at 8:30. "Remember," she said as we walked in, "stay calm, don't react. Let me do the talking." "Okay." My mother and Derek were already there with their attorney, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit. Derek saw me first. His face twisted with anger. My mother looked smaller somehow, fragile, her eyes red. I looked away. The hearing was procedural, quick. The judge reviewed the emergency motion, heard brief arguments from both sides, and granted a temporary injunction preventing the sale of the property pending further litigation. My mother's attorney argued it was causing financial hardship. The judge was unmoved. "If the plaintiff's claims are accurate, the defendant has been receiving substantial financial support for years," the judge said. "Why a few more months won't cause irreparable harm." We left the courthouse separately. I thought that was it. The first round. Done. Patricia warned me there would be mediation ordered, that this could take months. What I didn't expect was the family intervention. My uncle, my mother's brother, called me on Wednesday evening. "Maya," he said, his voice careful. "Can you come to my house this weekend? Saturday afternoon. I'm having a small birthday thing. It would mean a lot if you came." I hesitated. "Uncle Ray, I don't think—" "Please," he said. "I want to understand what's happening. Your mother's been calling me every day crying. I just want to hear your side. That's fair, isn't it?" It sounded reasonable. Uncle Ray had always been kind to me, a little distant, but kind. "Okay," I said. "Saturday afternoon." I texted Lisa that night. Told her about the invitation. She called immediately. "It's an ambush." "You don't know that." "Maya, your mother's been calling him every day. She's building her narrative. She wants witnesses when she tears you apart. He said he wants to hear my side." "Then bring your documentation and let me come with you." "You don't have to." "I want to. You're not walking into that alone." Saturday came. I picked up Lisa and drove to my uncle's house with a folder of copies, organized, highlighted. If he wanted my side, I'd give it to him. The house was full when we arrived. Not a small gathering. 15, maybe 20 people. My mother, Derek, several aunts and uncles, cousins I barely knew. An intervention. My mother saw me first. Her face crumpled. "Maya," she said, moving toward me. "Please, can we just talk about this? Privately?" "No," I said quietly. "Whatever you want to say it here." Uncle Ray stepped forward. "Maya, thank you for coming. We're all family here. We just want to understand what's happening." I looked around the room. Some faces sympathetic, some uncomfortable, some clearly on my mother's side already. "Okay," I said. "What do you want to know?" My mother took center stage. She was good at this, the performance of grief. "I don't understand why you're doing this," she said, her voice breaking. "After everything we've been through. After losing your father. You're trying to take our home." "I'm not trying to take anything," I said. "I'm claiming what I contributed." "You helped out," Derek said. He was standing beside our mother, protective. "We appreciate that. But you're acting like we owe you something. Like you're entitled to our house." "I paid the mortgage for 8 years," I said. My voice was steady, calm. "I paid for every major repair. I have records." "You lived there for years," my mother said. "We raised you, fed you. This is just what family does." "I moved out when I was 30, I said. "I've been paying for my own apartment." "Because you wanted to," Derek said. "Nobody forced you." Uncle Ray held up a hand. "Let's all stay calm. Maya, why don't you explain your side? We're listening. I opened my folder, pulled out the spreadsheet, handed copies to Uncle Ray and my two aunts. This is a breakdown of every payment I've made toward the house over the last 15 years, I said. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, repairs. It's all documented. The total is $287,000. The room went quiet. All people leaned in to look at the papers. These numbers are exaggerated, Derek said immediately. She's making this up. I have bank statements, I said. I pulled out more pages. Canceled checks, credit card statements. Every number is verifiable. My mother's face was red now. You chose to help. If you expected to be paid back, you should have said something. I have emails from you, I said. I read from one. Thank you for helping with the mortgage. We'll make this right when things get better. I looked up. You promised to make it right? I meant, we appreciated you, my mother said, her voice rising. Not that we'd pay you back like you were a bank. Then what did you mean? I asked. Because 3 weeks after Dad's funeral, you told me you were selling the house and splitting the money between you and Derek. You offered me $10,000 for nearly $300,000 in contributions. Uncle Ray was reading through the spreadsheet carefully. Is this accurate, Teresa? He asked my mother. Did Maya pay all this? My mother deflected. She's exaggerating. She helped out, yes, but it wasn't that much. And she lived with us for years. She owes us for raising her. I lived with you until I was 30, I said. I paid rent the entire time, $200 a month at first, then more. And I've been paying the mortgage from my own apartment for 8 years. One of my aunts, Aunt Carmen, spoke up. Teresa, is this true? She wanted to help, my mother said. This is what children do. They help their parents. For 20 years? Aunt Carmen said quietly. Nearly $300,000? She's being dramatic, Derek said. She's always been dramatic. Jealous that Mom and Dad supported me. I'm not jealous, Derek, I said. I looked at him directly. I'm tired. I've been supporting this family my entire adult life. I paid for the roof when it leaked, the furnace when it died, the funeral when Dad passed. I've paid and paid and paid, and you've contributed nothing. That's not fair, Derek said. I've been trying to find my path. You're 31 years old, I said. You've never held a job for more than a year. You've lived at home for free while I've been keeping that home standing. I'm not jealous. I'm done. My mother stood up dramatically. You're destroying this family. We just lost your father, and you're tearing us apart over money. You destroyed this family, I said quietly. When you decided I only mattered for what I could give. The room went silent. I handed more copies to my uncle. These are text messages and emails, promises to take care of me, acknowledgments of my contributions. I'm not making this up. I'm not exaggerating. I have proof of everything. Uncle Ray read through them slowly. When he finished, he looked at my mother. Teresa, these are pretty clear. You told her you'd make it right. I meant, my mother started. She paid your mortgage for 8 years, Uncle Ray said. That's not just helping out. That's major financial support. She's an ungrateful, selfish girl, my mother said, tears streaming now. After everything, after we raised her. I felt Lisa's hand on my arm, steadying me. I'm not ungrateful, I said. I'm protecting myself. Because if I don't, you'll take everything and convince yourselves you deserve it. This is wrong, Derek said. Family doesn't sue family. Family doesn't exploit family, I said. Aunt Carmen spoke up again. Teresa, I think Maya has a point. If she really paid all this money, she's lying, my mother said. I'm not, I said. And I'll prove it in court if I have to. But I'd rather settle this fairly. I want what I contributed. Nothing more. You want our house, Derek said. I want acknowledgement, I said. I want proof that my sacrifice meant something, that I wasn't just a bank account to you. My mother sat down heavily. Some relatives were looking at her differently now, questioning. Uncle Ray was still reading through the documents, his face troubled. I think we need to give Maya and Teresa some space to work this out, someone said. There's nothing to work out, my mother said. She's trying to steal from us. I'm not stealing anything, I said. I was shaking now, but my voice held steady. I'm claiming what's mine, and if you try to sell that house without addressing my contribution, I'll fight you in court. I have a lawyer. I have documentation, and I'm not backing down. I left with Lisa, got in my car and started shaking so hard I couldn't drive for 10 minutes. You did it, Lisa said. You stood up for yourself. They hate me now, I said. They hated you before, Lisa said gently. They just had you convinced it was love. That hurt. But it was true. Some relatives texted me later that day. Uncle Ray. I had no idea it was that much money. I'm sorry. Aunt Carmen. You did the right thing coming today. Your mother needs to face this. Others texted my mother, I'm sure. Taking sides. That's what families do when someone breaks the silence. They divide. But I didn't feel guilty anymore. I felt free. The court ordered mediation 6 weeks after the emergency hearing. Both sides and our attorneys would meet with a neutral mediator to try to reach a settlement before going to trial. I barely slept the night before. The mediation was held in a bland conference room in a downtown office building. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, a long table. Patricia sat beside me. My mother and Derek sat across with their attorney, Mr. Harmon. The mediator, a woman named Mrs. Brennan, was in her 60s with the tired patience of someone who'd seen every family dispute imaginable. Let's start with a clear picture of the situation, she said. Ms. Rodriguez, you've filed a claim for equitable interest in the property based on substantial financial contributions. Is that correct? Yes, Patricia said. Ms. Brennan turned to my mother's attorney. And you're arguing these contributions were gifts, with no expectation of repayment? Correct, Mr. Harmon said. Ms. Rodriguez helped her parents voluntarily. There was no formal agreement, no loan documents, no contract. May I see the documentation? Ms. Brennan asked. Patricia slid the folder across. Bank statements, spreadsheets, receipts, all of it. Ms. Brennan spent 30 minutes reviewing everything. The room was silent except for the rustle of papers. My mother kept glancing at me, her face tight. Derek scrolled through his phone. Finally, Ms. Brennan looked up. Ms. Rodriguez, she said to me, you've paid approximately $287,000 toward this property over 15 years? Yes. She turned to my mother. Mrs. Rodriguez, you acknowledge these payments were made? My mother glanced at Mr. Harmon. He nodded slightly. She helped out, my mother said. Yes. This is more than helping out, Ms. Brennan said. She wasn't unkind, but she was direct. This is substantial financial support, and you have emails and text messages promising to make it right and take care of her. That creates an expectation. We meant we appreciated her, Derek said. Ms. Brennan looked at him. You're the son? Yes. Did you contribute financially to the household? Derek's jaw tightened. I was finding my path. That's not an answer to my question. No, Derek said. I didn't contribute. Ms. Brennan made a note. Turned back to my mother. Mrs. Rodriguez, the current proposal is to sell the house and split proceeds between yourself and your son, giving your daughter approximately $10,000. Is that accurate? We thought that was fair, my mother said. Based on what metric? Silence. Your daughter paid $287,000, Ms. Brennan said. The mortgage has $89,000 remaining. That means she's paid approximately 70% of the house's equity. How is $10,000 fair? Mr. Harmon leaned forward. With respect, Ms. Rodriguez lived in the home for many years. She was provided housing, food, support, until she was 30, Ms. Brennan interrupted. And she paid rent during that time. The bulk of her contributions occurred after she moved out. Is that correct, Ms. Rodriguez? Yes, I said quietly. Ms. Brennan sat back. I'm going to be frank with all of you. If this goes to trial, Ms. Rodriguez has a strong case. Not a guaranteed case, but a strong one. She has documentation, she has correspondence acknowledging her contributions, she has proof of promises made. A judge could rule that she has an equitable interest in the property proportional to her financial contribution. That would likely be 60 to 70%. My mother's face went white. Alternatively, Ms. Brennan continued, a judge could rule these were gifts and award her nothing. That's possible too, but given the evidence, I'd estimate her chances of winning at around 70%. She paused. Litigation is expensive, it's time-consuming, it's emotionally devastating, especially within families. I strongly recommend you settle this today. What are you suggesting? Mr. Harmon asked. That depends on what Ms. Rodriguez wants. Ms. Brennan turned to me. What's your goal here? I glanced at Patricia. She nodded. I want to be acknowledged, I said. I want my contribution recognized. I don't want to take the house from my mother, I just want what's fair. In monetary terms? Ms. Brennan asked. 70% of the net sale proceeds, Patricia said. Reflecting her proportional contribution. Derek laughed. Actually laughed. That's insane. Is it? Ms. Brennan asked him. She paid 70% of the equity. How is that insane? She's our sister, Derek said. Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't exploit each other either, I said quietly. Ms. Brennan called for a break. My mother and Derek went into a separate room with their attorney. Patricia and I stayed in the conference room. You're doing great, Patricia said. Stay strong. They came back 40 minutes later. My mother looked shaken. Derek looked furious. We'll offer 30%, Mr. Harmon said. Patricia shook her head. 70. That's more than half, Mr. Harmon said. That's proportional to her contribution, Patricia said. Another break. Another 40 minutes. When they returned, Mr. Harmon said, 50%, that's our final offer. Patricia looked at me. I shook my head. 65, Patricia said. They countered at 55. We countered at 70. This went on for 2 hours. Back and forth. My mother crying at one point. Derek storming out twice. Finally, they agreed to 70%. With conditions, Mr. Harmon said. The house will be sold within 6 months. Ms. Rodriguez will have input on the realtor and sale terms. Mrs. Rodriguez will retain her right to live in the property until it sells. And Derek? Derek receives nothing. Derek stood up. This is bullshit. Sit down, my mother said tiredly. He sat. Additionally, Mr. Harmon continued, we want a clause that Mrs. Rodriguez has no further financial obligation to family members. No expectation of support going forward. Agreed, Patricia said. The settlement was drafted. Ms. Brennan reviewed it. We all signed. When it was done, my mother wouldn't look at me. Derek left without a word. I walked out of that building with a legal document stating I'd receive 70% of the net sale proceeds. Based on the estimated value, that was about $161,000. Patricia hugged me in the parking lot. You did it. I felt numb, empty, not triumphant, just tired. Over the next few weeks, Derek tried to rally relatives against me, posted vague things on social media about family betrayal. A few people reached out to me asking what really happened. I sent them the spreadsheet. Most went quiet after that. My mother called once. I hope you're happy, she said. You've destroyed this family. I didn't destroy anything, I said. I just stopped letting you destroy me. She hung up. The house sold 4 months later. A young family bought it for $345,000. After selling costs and paying off the mortgage, the net was $230,000. 70% of that was $161,000. The check arrived on a Tuesday in April. I held it in my hands and felt nothing, then everything, then nothing again. This wasn't victory. It was just the end of a long, painful loss. But at least now, I had proof. Proof that my sacrifice had been real. Proof that I hadn't imagined it. Proof that I'd mattered, even if not to them. I deposited the check. And I started building a life that was finally, completely mine. The money sat in my bank account for 2 weeks before I touched it. I'd spent so many years having nothing, no savings, no cushion, no safety net beyond my monthly paycheck, that having $161,000 felt surreal. Like it might disappear if I acknowledged it. Lisa met me for coffee the week after the check cleared. "What are you going to do with it?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Part of me wants to just leave it there. Proof that it was real." "It was real," Lisa said gently. "You don't need money in the bank to prove that." She was right, but I wasn't ready yet. Dr. Park and I talked about it in therapy. About why I was afraid to use the money, afraid to move forward. "You're grieving," she said. "Not just your father's death. You're grieving the family you wanted but never had. The parents who should have loved you unconditionally. The childhood you deserved." I cried in that session. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and ancient, that empties you out and leaves you hollow. "I gave them everything," I said, "and it was never going to be enough." "No," Dr. Park said, "it wasn't. Because they weren't capable of seeing you. That's their failure, not yours." Slowly, carefully, I started using the money. First, I paid off all my debts. The credit card I'd used for my father's funeral, the personal loan from the roof, smaller balances on other cards. Watching those numbers go to zero felt like unlocking chains I'd worn so long I'd forgotten they were there. Then I built an emergency fund. 6 months of expenses sitting untouched. Security, safety, the knowledge that if something broke or I got sick or I lost my job, I wouldn't drown. Then I started looking at condos. Not big places. I didn't need big, but something mine. Something I chose. Something no one could take from me. I found a 2-bedroom in a neighborhood I'd always loved. Tree-lined streets, a small park nearby, coffee shops within walking distance. The down payment was $35,000. I made an offer. It was accepted. I moved in on a Saturday in July. Lisa helped me. But we carried boxes up 2 flights of stairs, assembled furniture I'd bought without asking permission or justifying the cost. We hung curtains, arranged books, set up the small kitchen. That night, we sat on my new couch with takeout pizza, and I looked around at the space that was completely, utterly mine. "How do you feel?" Lisa asked. "Strange," I said. "Free. Sad. Relieved. All of it." "That's normal," she said. "You're allowed to feel all of it." I booked a trip to Portugal in August. Something I'd wanted to do for years but never allowed myself. 2 weeks. Solo. I walked through Lisbon streets, ate pastel de nata in small cafes, stood at the edge of the ocean and felt small and infinite at the same time. I didn't think about my family much on that trip. When I did, it was with a strange detachment. Like they were characters in a story I'd read once, tragic and flawed and distant. My mother sent a text while I was away. "Derek's struggling financially. If you could help." I deleted it without responding. She tried again a month later. "I can barely afford groceries on my portion of the money. I know you got more. Surely you could spare a little." I blocked her number. Not out of anger. Out of self-preservation. because I understood now that they would take forever if I let them. They'd convinced themselves they were entitled to me, and no amount of money or legal judgments would change that belief. I had to protect myself from them, even if it meant cutting them off completely. Some relatives stayed in touch. Uncle Ray texted occasionally, asked how I was doing. Aunt Carmen sent a card on my birthday, the first one I'd received from family in years. A few cousins reached out, quietly supportive. Others took my mother's side. That was fine. I'd learned that you can't control what people believe, especially when they're only hearing one side. Derek blocked me on every platform. I heard through the family grapevine that he was bitter, angry, convinced I'd stolen his inheritance. I felt nothing about that. He'd always been the center of his own story. I didn't need to be in it anymore. Through therapy, I processed the deeper wounds, the ones that went beyond money. You were parentified, Dr. Park explained, made responsible for adult problems as a child. You learned that love was conditional, earned through service. That belief system is so deep that even now, but you struggle to accept that you deserve good things just for existing. She was right. I caught myself feeling guilty for every small pleasure. The nice coffee maker I bought, the bookshelf I splurged on, the vacation. Each time, a voice in my head said, "You don't deserve this. You should be saving it. What if someone needs it?" "Who needs it?" Dr. Park asked. "I don't know," I said. "Someone." "Not someone," she said gently. "Your family. You're still protecting resources for them, even though they're not in your life anymore." Learning to spend money on myself felt like learning a new language. I practiced in small ways. Nice shampoo, a plant for my living room, a meal at a restaurant I'd always wanted to try. Each purchase was a tiny act of rebellion against the voice that said I didn't matter. I started rebuilding my social life. Reached out to old friends I'd lost touch with. Most were understanding, welcoming even. A few had moved on, and that was okay too. I joined a book club, started volunteering at a women's financial literacy nonprofit, teaching workshops on budget management and recognizing financial abuse. Helping other women see the patterns I'd been trapped in for so long. I started dating again. Slowly, carefully. And I noticed the difference immediately. Before, I'd been attracted to people who needed me, who had problems I could solve, who made me feel useful. Now I was attracted to people who saw me, who asked about my day and actually listened, who contributed to the relationship instead of just taking from it. Nothing serious yet. But the possibility was there, the possibility of someone who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. 1 year after the settlement, Lisa came over for dinner. We'd become close again. Real friends this time, not just friendly acquaintances. I'd learned to cook for pleasure instead of duty. Made pasta from scratch, opened wine I'd bought because I liked the label, set my small table with the nice dishes I'd allowed myself to buy. We talked and laughed, and I realized, in the middle of a story Lisa was telling, that I was happy. Not perfectly healed. Not without grief or anger or complicated feelings about my family. But happy. Present. Myself. After Lisa left, I stood at my window looking out at the city lights. My city. My view. My life. I thought about the girl I'd been at 22. Paying her first mortgage contribution, believing it was temporary, believing that sacrifice would eventually equal love. Men, I thought about every year between then and now, every payment, every hope, every moment of invisibility. I'd spent 20 years trying to earn love from people who'd decided long ago I wasn't worth loving. Not because I was unlovable, but because they weren't capable of loving anyone beyond themselves. That wasn't my failure. It was theirs. And I'd finally stopped carrying it. I grieved for the family I'd wanted. The mother who'd see me, the father who'd be proud, the brother who'd be a friend. I grieved for the years I'd lost, the life I could have built if I hadn't been trying so hard to matter to people who'd already decided I didn't. But I also felt something else: gratitude. Because standing up for myself, filing that lawsuit, facing them in court, claiming what was mine, had taught me something I'd never learned before. And I was worth fighting for, not because of what I could do or give or sacrifice, but because I was a person, a whole, complete, valuable person, and I deserved to be treated like one. I deserved safety, security, peace, joy. I deserved a life that belonged to me. The legal fight hadn't been about money, really. It had been about refusing to be erased, refusing to let them write me out of my own story, refusing to disappear quietly while they convinced themselves I'd never really mattered. I'd made myself visible. I'd claimed my space. I'd said, I was here. I contributed. I mattered. And even though they couldn't acknowledge it, I knew it was true. That was enough. I turned away from the window and looked at my small home. The plants I was learning to keep alive. The books I'd bought because I wanted to read them. The art on the walls that I'd chosen because it made me feel something. Everything here was mine, chosen, earned, protected. I'd learned the hardest lesson: you can't make people love you. You can't sacrifice enough, give enough, disappear enough to earn love from people who aren't capable of giving it. But you can love yourself. You can choose yourself. You can build a life where you're not invisible, not useful, not conditional. Just you. Whole. Enough. I was 39 years old, and for the first time in my life, I belonged to myself. That was freedom. That was healing. That was home.